Happening today, Governor Healey expects to sign legislation that would recognize both service members and veterans. And joining us to tell us more about that is Western Mass News reporter Taylor Smith, live in studio this morning with those details. Good morning, Taylor.
Good morning, David. And that's right. This is an important day for both the governor and those who are making or have made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our country. Now, this act is meant to honor and recognize both service members and veterans, and it would be the first comprehensive and expansive bill in 2 decades that a Massachusetts governor would introduce dedicated to veterans' welfare. This bill was unanimously passed by the state Senate on June 13th as a way to increase support for hundreds of thousands of people across the Commonwealth who have served in the military, which includes nearly 30,000 women veterans, as well as thousands of LGBTQ+ veterans. Now, according to the governor's office, it would increase benefits for disabled veterans as well, codify dental and medical benefits, update the definition of a veteran, increase support for businesses that hire veterans, and expand the scope of the Veterans Equality Review Board. Some other benefits would also include expanding veteran property tax exemptions and waiving fees on the specialty veterans license plates when it comes to motor vehicle benefits. Now, Governor Healey is expected to sign this bill in Lexington at 1 this afternoon, as she is surrounded by veterans and service members, as well as Veteran Service Secretary John Santiago. And I'm reporting live in the studio this morning, Taylor Smith, Western Mass News.